action, action. Lights, camera, action. Let's go. Lights, camera, action, action. Pop up a little, pop up a little.
I'm Mark Ramsey. I am super happy to talk to Steve Jones. Do you know Steve Jones? Steve Jones is the VP of Programming for New Cap Radio in Canada. New Cap's one of Canada's largest radio groups, and welcome, Steve.
Hey, thanks, Mark. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
I'm thrilled to have you, Steve, because not only are you Vice President of Programming for New Cap, but you are a real bona fide book author, like a guy who writes books, real books. You know?
It's weird, huh? And most of the words are spelled right. It's strange to me.
As far as I can tell, they're all spelled right, but we have tools for that nowadays. The book is called Brand Like a Rock Star.
I think that we often get caught up in numbers and in ratings and in the moment and forget that if you don't truly care about what you're doing, if you're not passionate about it, you know, they say the smile comes through on the air, but the passion comes through on the air, fun comes through on the air. And it's easy in the business of broadcasting to lose sight of how much that really does matter. When you truly care about something, you're able to communicate a level of passion and excitement far beyond someone who's just, you know, going through the motions or just doing it because it's PPM friendly or it's you know, what they're told to do. Yeah, it's about passion, it's about values. It's about being part of a tribe, something bigger than yourself, almost in a religious sense. You know, bands like the Grateful Dead were able to inspire that level of passion and dedication and devotion. It really is. It is about passion, and that's really what branding is about. It's about emotions, and there's a lot of in the book about the idea that brands aren't logos, they aren't positioning statements, they're emotions, they're emotional connections, and it's really hard to control that, even if you spend millions of dollars to try influence it. Ultimately, what people think about you, what they feel about you, what they passionately believe you are, is what you really are.
Well, let me ask you the difficult question, and maybe the impossible question, which is, okay, if brands are about emotional connections, what can I do as a radio brand to get those emotional connections, to make those emotional connections? What are some of the rules of thumb I should employ?
Well, we have to be about things people care about. And no one will ever come up to you as a morning show host. No one will ever come up to you 20 years down the road and say, God, I love the way you played 12 in a row commercial free every hour after 9 a.m. But they will come up to you and say, I remember that time when your dog died and you were in tears on the air, and I could so relate to that because my dog had passed away. You know, when we talk about things that matter to people, when we really connect with them on a level that makes a difference in their lives, that's where passion is. That's where emotions come from. You can throw out positioning statements all you want, and you can play as many songs in a row uninterrupted as you want, but you'll never ever achieve any level of emotional connection doing just that. All those things are important, but we can't lose sight of how important emotions really are.
You know, it's funny, the best broadcasters I work with are all keenly sensitive to the fact that PPM doesn't reward them if they get sloppy on the mic, if the mic's open too long, if they do anything other than play a lot of music in a row for too long a stretch. But at the same time, all of them are keenly aware that if they don't make that mic time count, if they don't connect with people on an emotional level about things they care about when those mics are open, then they lose. And they all recognize that time is critical, even though it may not be obvious from PPM. Is that what your observation is also?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. It absolutely is. And it's easy to say that, well, that's difficult to do, so let's not do it. Let's play another song. Let's play another 5 in a row, because it's difficult to be real and human, and it's difficult to elicit emotional reactions in people. But we have to strive for that. It's the only way to succeed. It's the only way to build a brand, and if you build a brand, if you build up expectations, that's the only way to get people coming back to you. Because in our business, it's inevitable that people will go away. We're going to play songs that people don't like, and there's just no way around that. Not everybody likes every song. So you need to have that expectation in your audience, that expectation built in that if I come back, something good will happen.
One of the things you talk about early in your book is kind of your first 2 chapters, in fact. The first one's about consistency, and the second one is about change. And you use illustrations of rock artists to prove both points. But it seems to me those are, on the surface, inherently at odds, right? Consistency and change.
Yeah.
How do you kind of reconcile these two things as a broadcaster, the need to deliver to expectation and yet the need to evolve?
I would reconcile it looking at a musical point of view. You know, AC/DC is the band I hold up as an example of consistency, and there's no doubt that, you know, a band that played really 3 chords in 30 years is consistent in everything they do. But that's a little bit boring, and it's sort of discouraging that you can never change. You can change. Look at the Beatles. The Beatles, with every new song, was a new revolution in recording techniques, in songwriting techniques, and how songs could be created, how they could be written, how they could be presented. People didn't just buy Beatles music because it was a great song. People ran out to buy the new Beatles albums because it was a step forward in how we digest music. And in business, it's the same thing. You know, consistency can be being the same, or you can be consistently amazing. You can consistently surprise your audience. You can consistently amaze them and delight them in different ways. It doesn't always have to be exactly the same way. But the point of consistency is that even as you change in a consistent way. Listeners come to expect that they can get something from you, something very good from you, and they can consistently get that, even if you're giving it to them in different ways each time. Right.
How do you build in innovation in an environment where resources are slashed, let's say, where people are stretched, where incentives are very short-term monetary, you know, profit incentives? How do you maintain an innovative spirit, and how do you make sure that you keep that change and that evolution happening?
Well, I think if I could easily answer that question, we would save the industry. I think it does, though, come down to the right people. You have to have people who are empowered and people who are capable of taking that empowerment and turning it into something positive on the radio. And you have to have people behind them on a management level who will stand up for mistakes and recognize that failure is an essential step to success, that sometimes we're going to make mistakes. This won't always be perfect. Not every at-bat will be a home run. And you have to have patience, because things don't connect overnight. And all those things are somewhat lacking in our industry, and I realize that with resources slashed, it gets harder and harder to do it. But it only takes 1 or 2 great people. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't take 20 people to be great on the air. 1 or 2 great shows can elevate a whole radio station. And of course, you know, as you win, resources become more available to you. So there is a chicken and egg thing. How do you get ahead when resources are cut? But once you get ahead, the resources tend to come, and if you use them wisely, you know, you build on that success and snowball it.
So it's about, at the onset, though, it's about having kind of the permission to fail, the permission to try things, because without those trials, you know, you're spinning your wheels, right?
Yeah, and I think every band has done that. Every band has recorded a song that didn't quite connect. Look at U2, and they went through a whole phase in the early 90s of recording music that they felt was relevant, that most of their fans felt was weird, you know, but they came around and they came back and they continued to evolve. And remarkably, U2 has survived through all these changes to be the most profitable rock band of all time, really.
One of your chapters talks about the idea of not selling products or services, but really selling experiences. You translate it all to experience. In the context of radio, how would you define what you mean by an experience?
Well, again, it goes back to emotions. It goes back to what I feel when I listen to a certain radio station. I've talked to jocks about that before when they say, well, you know, what do I say? How do I talk to this target listener? And I tell them, don't focus on what you say. Focus on what they're going to feel. Focus on the experience at the end of it all. And that could be a big thing, like a morning show that, you know, the experience is edge, or the experience is raunchy, the experience is humor, the experience is sex, or the experience is celebrity gossip. Whatever the experience is, the emotion is. That's where it begins. It's so much more than just get in and out in 10 seconds. It's so much more than just using certain words. It's really about building an experience and an expectation. I think that one of my favorite chapters in the book, and it's one of the weirder chapters that I was reluctant to even include, is about the power of white space and the power of what you leave out, what you don't say, what you choose to give up and surrender, and how that impacts your brand. In the case of the book, I'm writing about business in general, but it applies to radio too. What songs you don't play, what things you don't talk about, what clients you don't allow on your radio station, what you choose not to stand for, and how much that can have an influence on how your radio station is perceived and how your brand is perceived as a business. In the book, I used a few examples of the Beatles' White Album and Zeppelin 4, and albums that had really no title on them, They were able to just add a little mystery and intrigue to what they were doing. In radio, we seem sometimes so excited to tell everybody everything about what we do. And in business, it's sort of the same thing. People put an ad on the radio and talk about 10 different things in the ad because they're so excited about communicating what they're about. And I think there's a lot to be said for stripping that back and leaving a little mystery and intrigue into the brand in an artistic way, like Da Vinci painting the Mona Lisa used a technique called sfumato, which is the idea that the lines are blurred and smoky, that the painting's not really finished. And the fact that it's blurred and smoky and unfinished intrigues the eye, intrigues the mind, and forces you to think about it. And in a lot of art history textbooks, they talk about how that technique is what brings his paintings to life.
It's interesting that you talk about mystery because, I would use maybe some less artistic and cultural references and point to things like American Idol. Or a reality television where, or the work of J.J. Abrams, pretty much anything he does. J.J. Abrams did a TED conference presentation where he came in with a box, and the box was a box he had as a kid that contained some mystery thing, and he never, ever opened the box.
Yeah, I remember
said,
that.
It's a box of mystery, and that was the whole point. It's what's inside that you don't understand is what makes the journey worthwhile. And I think that's a really interesting analogy, and it extends not only to the things we don't play and don't do, which is more, what we're not or what we're against, but to the things maybe we draw out in stories, right?
Right. Yeah. The little details we leave out, the mystery we're able to create around promotions or around on-air content, and like you said, stories. It absolutely is. It's creating drama. It's creating a reason to tune in and stay tuned in because something really cool is happening here, and you might not even know what it is, but there's something cool happening. That's what J.J. Abrams does all the time.
Mm-hmm. Very cleverly hidden on the book is a dial, and the dial I did notice goes to 11. So
I'm glad you caught that. Yeah, my parents, when they first saw the cover of the book, asked me why there was the knob from the oven was on the cover of the book, and I said, no.
Thanks.
You haven't seen Spinal Tap, Mom.
Thanks a lot. Steve, what website can people go to for more info?
Well, brandlikearockstar.com is the website. The blog is there. Information on how to order the book is there. You can also order it through Amazon.com and other online outlets. And I do, actively take part on Twitter. The handle is Rockstar Brands. And on Facebook, it's facebook.com/brandlikearockstar. Any one of those avenues will get people connected. And I'm try to be as interactive and helpful as I can be when it comes to answering questions or helping to solve problems. And, much like the Grateful Dead did with their career, I try to give as much as I can away free before I ask for anything in return.
Well, I love the fact that you're facing outside the industry and using everything you know from the industry to help others outside. And I also love the fact that NewCap allows you to do that, which I think is awesome.
I can't give them enough thanks. Our COO, Dave Murray, has been remarkably supportive and just, encouraged me to go forward. It's amazing to see a company that recognizes that by allowing their people to creatively explore these things, they benefit. And sometimes we get so caught up in radio in protecting our talent that we take away opportunities from them. And I'm very grateful for NewCap's cooperation and support for sure.
It's very true. The best way for the radio industry to get positive publicity outside the radio industry is to have a face outside the radio industry. So I'm glad you do.
Thank you very much.
Steve Jones is the Vice President of Programming for NewCap Radio and the author of Brand Like a Rockstar. Yes, the dial goes up to 11. Pick it up at a bookstore near you or at Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. Steve, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.